And the right brain has always been associated with the divine feminine and creation. Always.
So, and that's what's interesting there, because the serpent, like, I'm very good friends with Paul Rosalie. Love him. Paul, you do amazing work. I don't fuck with snakes, though, right? Like, that guy fucking loves snakes
not
and
real
everything.
snakes, though.
I understand,
Okay.
but, like, you know where my head goes.
Okay.
I think serpent, I think literally,
Yeah.
you know, devilish shit, right?
Yeah.
What you seem to be saying is that it's the other way around.
They ended up inverting almost every symbol after around the Holy Roman Empire period. That's where I've traced it. Is that people don't know is that the Roman Empire used to be a non-monotheistic civilization, meaning that they didn't believe in a single god. That's called monotheistic religion. Romans used to believe in the planets being gods, and they used to worship them. Okay, and they believed in like more of the old ways, blah blah blah. But the point was that when the Roman Empire was collapsing, there was a man named Constantine. And Constantine ended up having this brilliant idea where they would restructure the Roman Empire in where? Istanbul, Turkey.
Son of a bitch.
That's where it started, was Istanbul with Constantine. That's why it was called Constantinople.
Constantinople, yeah.
Constantinople, thank you. And so Constantine was brilliant. He's like, okay, so how do we control everything? And they were like, well, if we rewrite history, we can write the future too, because who controls the past controls the future. And then they also realized, well, we can't really have people like reaching higher states of consciousness through spirituality and through these teachings, so let's also take over religion. And then we can have the trifecta of what was supposed to be is in that mural, remember? Mm-hmm. The priest and the king. That's exactly what they did. They created that in a completely different way. And what they did was they then turned into a monotheistic religion. And instead, then they started like persecuting anyone that wasn't a Christian, remember?
Yes, and this is what happens with religion.
And then the Christian wars took off.
Yes.
But then what they did was interesting, is then they burned the Library of Alexandria. And then what they did is they went around the world and systematically destroyed all the ancient groups that were pre-Christian, such as the Gnostics. And that's the entire reason why the Dogon ended up in Mali. Because Egypt was under religious persecution from not only the Romans, but other groups. It was like there was a war over the ancient ways versus the new ways of thinking. And so the Roman Empire, the Crusades by the Christian Empire, was not about just converting people to Christianity, but it was about literally destroying any echoes of the past. Yeah. And so to this day, we don't know how many ancient things were really destroyed.
See, this is where I always say this, you know, and I don't attack organized religion. I think most of the people who have organized religion as a big part of their life use it for all the right reasons, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's a personal thing. And so I think it gets aggressive to do that. But for whatever reason, you know, and it was heavier in the older times. I think today it's lighter for the most part because of civilization moving forward with some things.
More acceptable and everything.
But, you know, there's that back 10% of people who just use religion for power.
Yeah.
And they ruin it for everyone else. And it just, I mean, every time you learn about it in history, you just get frustrated because it just repeats itself over and over again.
Yes.
But anyway, so thank you for the context.
But I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because without that religious context, now it makes more sense to people maybe why Eridu is treated the way it is.
And I do just want to say as a note for the people listening right now, I can tell looking at the clock, we're in the second podcast, so I want to say something I said in the first podcast just for context, but there are times today, again, where I'm stopping you on some things to define stuff. Yeah. And there are people out there who are experts on this stuff, listen to a lot of it, who are going to be like, God damn it, I already know this. But for the people who aren't listening, I'm doing that. So my apologies if I'm cutting Matt off sometimes to make sure we go through some things. But you and I did talk about that ahead of time.
Yeah. And
so you were at, and I made a note of this, you were at where the end of the Aldrahasis.
Hold on. Before we do that, I just want to summarize up what we were just saying.
Okay.
In the knowledge of what I just said, what we find is that there were civilizations that were emerging in the Americas that just sort of came out of nowhere. Graham Hancock talks about this all the time with the Olmec, how the Olmec are this incredibly mysterious group that seems to have African origins, and yet we're told that the only migratory patterns of ancient people came from through the Bering Strait. So there's already the Olmec, because they were practicing rubber extraction, which came from Africa, and they looked at very African-like features, as well as other things. it's what we're seeing is an entire narrative and story that's different than we've been told. And what that is that, and I want to just lay this out there. The Maya state that their great sage or teacher that taught them everything, who created their civilization, his name was called Kukulkan. Okay? Now, Kukulkan was shown as what's called a feathered dragon. It's not really that. It's a symbol. But remember, getting back to Enki. Enki's symbol was the dragon and the serpent. It was his symbol. It goes all the way back in the Garden of Eden, where the serpent tempted Eve. That's him. That's just written from that perspective because Enki he's Prometheus. He gave fire to humans. He's the reason why we all the forbidden things that we became was him. And he became demonized of the greatest degree. He became this Satan demon figure. Okay? Because, remember I told you they assumed roles in different parts of reality?
Yes.
He ended up going in the underworld. Alongside his negative counterpart known as Nergal. Now, people don't know this. Now, remember law of correspondence? They were obsessed with it. You remember what the law of correspondence is?
No.
As above, so below. And what that means is not just the stars and Earth as a plane, but realms of reality, meaning that there are like above dimensions and like lower dimensions, and third dimension, our reality is like sandwiched in between. We're almost like in between different realms of reality. And so he's described as going to rule in the underworld alongside Nergal, a very evil, wicked war god, to be a positive counterpart. And then in the above is a negative Enlil, who's a war god, and his positive counterpart, known as Thoth. Or there's various names, but it's like it's exactly paralleled. A negative and a positive and a positive and a negative. That's what they did. But what that also did was that he became his entire anything related to him, anything related to the serpent or the dragon became so demonized that it was like the ultimate sin. And that was why Eridu became completely abandoned. It's his patron city. But it's not the only reason, and there's others as well. That was his patron city.
And so you're just saying it all got flipped on its head.
Yeah.
On
now,
purpose.
Let's get back to the Americas.
Okay.
In the Americas, the Maya created all these civilizations, and they say that they're serpent feather god, right? And feathers just mean ascension to a higher form.
And where were the Maya relative to modern day geography? Where were they located?
Great question. You mean historically? Like what time frame?
Well, both. The time frame and also what countries that we now know.
So what we find is the Maya really were like the domain of the Yucatan of Mexico. And the Olmec were more like the Veracruz aspect of Mexico, sort of southwest towards...
Got it.
Yeah. Now, so Kukulkan is supposedly this great leader, sage, that taught them how to build temples to the stars and then taught them everything and left. And then you find that the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl is the exact same thing. It's the same feathered serpent god, supposedly teaching them everything and then leaving. Then you find out Viracocha to the Inca, it was a feathered serpent god who taught them everything and then left. It's like at some point you find out they're all the same person. So Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, and Viracocha, they're all the same. And you find out that they were just the same influences all around the world. Now, this is what the point I'm trying to make with this is, it was all influenced by the same person, a feathered serpent god, teaching them about higher knowledge of consciousness and everything. Then they end up changing the name of it to reference that. So we were told that Americas, North and South America, is named after the Italian explorer, but it's not. It's named after Amaruca, which is the original name that the indigenous people call the region.
How do you know that?
Because they have it, they talk about it all the time. It's like it's well known in South America, especially Peru and Bolivia.
But is it just ancient? Is it like, ancient rumor? People just like to say that, or is there actually evidence to support
There
that?
are depictions of Viracocha from ancient times, and that have the alternate name in the region of Amaruca. And it's very well known for those who study down in that region that Amaruca became America. And what it means the land of the feathered serpents. That's what it means. And Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, and Viracocha is because that was their symbol. They weren't really dragons, but it was their symbol, and then they moved on. Now, this is where I just want to quickly segue back to this. So think about them as the serpent dragon civilizations, okay? Now think about Columbus, Cortez, and Pizarro. All conquered systematically north to south in the Americas from the Spanish Empire that had the eagle on its crest, just so you know, who sent Columbus to what's the United States now, like the Bahamas area, who, by the way, and I don't want to go on a segue in Columbus, but oh my God, if people knew the truth about Columbus,
horrible guy.
What he actually did was take slavery in Portugal and the Dominican Republic to mine gold. And they went back and forth for gold. There was nothing about spices or a trade. The whole thing was a lie.
I know people like get on everything as like woke rewriting of history, but the fact that we still have a fucking day after that guy is a disgrace.
Yeah, he basically just took slaves and went back and forth and mined gold, just if you want to summarize it.
He was a terrible human being.
So he conquers that area, and then what happens is Cortez comes right after him and conquers all of Mexico and the Aztec. And the only reason he was able to do that...
They thought he was a god.
They thought he was returning Quetzalcoatl on the exact anniversary that the ancient people had believed, which means that the Catholic Church knew about that.
What?
It means that the Catholic Church, who was the one who sent him, the Spanish Catholic Church,
knew about what the Aztecs over there even were and were thinking.
That's the only reason they sent him, because they knew that...
What did they do? Have a spy undercover there?
If he went there, the Aztec had 200,000 warriors. He went over with 110 men.
Yes, but he also...
They're saying what happened, I'll tell you the story. I mean, he arrived on the shores of Veracruz, Mexico.
Yeah,
he comes in with horses and all this armor, and he actually told them that he was Quetzalcoatl. And they were like...
How do we know that?
Because they said to him, "Are you Quetzalcoatl?"
He just said yes. That's not that hard, though.
Okay, but...
He could just be like, yeah, sure, call me that.
But he came at the exact time that Quetzalcoatl was supposed to return as a prophecy from thousands of years ago.
Now, I understand that would be a fucking unbelievable coincidence.
The year he's supposed to return.
But how would they have known that, where he came from?
Because they'd already been there.
Do we have any evidence of that?
But my theory is that the church and the power of those empires, I think they knew more than we know. They knew about these old ancient gods. They knew about some of this, and it was only kept, though, in the highest priesthood and the highest echelons.
And you might be right. You may very well be right there. But how that was...
Because they knew that there was tons of gold. Because
but we're also talking about the same people who, and at this point it was past that point, but like they thought they were, fucking traveling to India when they first...
I don't think that the story of them saying he was looking for a spice tree is right at all. I think that's a front. What I think that makes the most sense is because they knew how much gold was in specifically South America. Most of the gold is around Cusco and Peru area, but there is gold in Mexico, and there is gold especially like Columbus found it in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico.
Okay, so they knew it by the time Cortez got there in 15-something. They knew it based on the previous expeditions that there was reasonable evidence that there was a fuck ton of gold.
And they probably also knew that there was a prophecy of the return of Quetzalcoatl from already visiting and learning about that, is what I imagine.
Uh-huh.
How else could they have known all those resources are there? Because they ended up finding what was at the time the greatest catch of gold on Earth. Peru was the richest area of gold on the planet. And it wasn't until South Africa they discovered the massive reserves of gold under South Africa that they found other places. But Peru had absolutely incredible wealth of gold. I mean, so much gold that, the ancient El Dorado myth? Cusco was that place, and when they first arrived in Cusco, it literally had gold. Things were like I'm trying to say paved in gold, but they were like covered in gold.
You called it a myth, though.
Well, because they never were able to prove what El Dorado is.
I know, but like Francisco, I'm obsessed with El Dorado. Francisco de Orellana.
Yeah.
I mean, he reported what he reported.
Oh, I know, and because it's in the thing. I think the reason there's like a complication in that story is because they stole it all, and so the story is that, and I don't want to go too far offhand, but Cortez lands in Mexico, pretends he's Quetzalcoatl, captures Moctezuma, their leader. This is how it went. This is the only reason they defeated them. I don't know if you know this story. He captures Moctezuma, holds him for ransom. Then, of course, all the people realize he's not really Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, and then they all got sick too.
No, well, yeah, but then he executes.
Oh yeah,
he kills Moctezuma, their leader, and then he subsequently goes to the Aztec at the time were living on an island called in Lake Texcoco, and they were living on an island that only had land bridges across it. It was this huge lake that's shallow. It's where today Mexico City is, and so what they did was they closed off the access and exit points to the civilization on the island and starved everybody to death. And made everybody have no water, and they all died. Literally, they caused a starvation and death. I think it's reported to be 100,000 people in Tenochtitlan. So that was how they conquered the Aztec, was being very, very clever, because they knew that in open battle they would have lost. So they went to battle after the people in Tenochtitlan were all dying of thirst and hunger. Then they charged in with horses and armor, and then just killed everybody.
And at this point, did they have more than 110 men?
No.
They were still...
I think it was 146, if I remember correctly. And they lost like 2.
How long from arrival to starved them all out and came in and killed the rest?
I think it was a couple years. But I mean, what we're talking about here is imagine an army of 140 or so people on horseback killing like 75,000 soldiers. Or 100,000 soldiers. They described them as cutting them down like cattle, like farm animals.
Now, relative to a lot of the stuff we're speaking about today, this is not that long ago.
No.
This is like 500 years.
It's the reason I'm saying all this is that then right after that occurred, Pizarro conquered South America with the Inca.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.